all of them as well. What a move for the 48. Oh, look at this, and onto the straight they come.
Brilliant move there from the number 40 to make it through. That left-hander sliding up the inside, going up now over Hawthorne Hill, down Pilgrim's Drop, and it's brilliant stuff here at Brands Hatch.
After a week off, we are back with more racing action here from the World GT Championship. It's the 17th season of this championship, and we are coming to you from the virtual Interlagos here on RaceSpotTV. Hello, everybody. My name is Paul Smith, and joining me, as always, this season is Ron Mounds. And Ron, Interlagos, it's a fantastic venue. We should see plenty of action, shouldn't we?
We absolutely will. Interlagos, one of my favorite tracks in not just the Formula One calendar, but the world of racing as well. Some of my most fond memories in my entire time, not only in sim racing, but in racing games back when I was playing on my Xbox 360, was playing around this track, driving around this track on F1 2014. I absolutely adore Interlagos, and despite the fact this scan is a little bit older than some of the other scans that we'll be visiting throughout this season, this track is still going to produce some tip-top racing action.
It should absolutely give us some great action. Here is where we have been so far. Nürburgring, Bathurst and Silverstone last time out. We had a week off last week, and now we're here at Interlagos for one of our technical rounds. We'll discuss what that means in a few moments' time. Sebring and Hockenheim take us to the halfway point of the season in mid-March, before we then head to the Temple of Speed in Italy, Monza, before Rudd Atlanta, Watkins Glen, Imola Imola, Spa-Francorchamps, and the Red Bull Ring to finish off the season. And well, this Pro Championship looks really, really close, really intense so far, because we have in first place then it is Dino Lombardi, who's just got a 42-point lead over Anders Meyer, who is looking really solid for his position this season. Jack Sedgwick, the former champion, is in third place ahead of Alex Cohen, with Adam State, Lorenzo Castellani, Michael Avdoka, Daniel Ola, with Alessio Bonino and Aiden Young rounding out your top 10 in Pro. In Pro-Am, Adam Watson leads by 84 points in that championship over Paul Webster and his Full Tilt Motorsport teammate of Will Guthrie. Jack Osborne then is 2 points behind, with a further point behind Nikolai Agard. Then it's Richard Simner, Dan Blackwell, Joe Newman, Taylor Lane and Michael Gray. In AM Championship, Kristander Thasang, what a start to the season it's been for them. 5 points in the lead in that Racing Lab Esports car over Aidan Carter in second place. Simon Andre Livingston and Luca Monroe just have 5 points separating the two of those, with then Ben Altria, Jack London, Dan McCauley, Janman Pruis, Tom Stanley and Ben Gregory, although but the standings that I'm looking at is a little bit different to what we have there on those standings there. Right, anyway, Teams Championships, the important ones for the groups. WSR Esports Butt Kicker are leading that one by 28 points over 07 Racing. Then it's WSR Next Level Racing with Racing Lab Esports Ford. Altitude 3M Esports, we'll discuss them and a couple of changes that's happening to them. Full Tilt Motorsport with Altitude Esports by SimStickers. Atomic Esports, WSR Esports Abruzzi and Hyperion Racing rounding out the top 10. Then just 9 teams in the Pro-Am standings. It's Prasad and Omad who are leading that one by 101 points over Altitude Esports by Mr. Hedge. DCW Racing Blue ahead of Racing Lab Esports, Series 1 Racing, Team Heap Together and Ominous Gaming, with Full Tilt Racing 7th, Full Tilt Competition in 8th, and in 9th place is DCW Racing Yellow. We have 52 cars here for you today. Qualifying is coming to an end in the next couple of minutes or so. There has been a little bit of an announcement for one of the teams. Mark Fletcher, the team boss, has been in touch with me from Altitude Esports, and they have gone into a full partnership with 3M. It's still the same drivers and teams, but they are wanting to close the gap between sim and real world racing, and partnering with a brand who supports real drivers all over the world and supports this championship as well. I mean, Ron, we're seeing how these teams, these sim racing teams, are growing and growing. That's a great piece of news for Altitude Esports to partner up with 3M.
Yeah, that's a really good partnership to have. You mentioned a very good point about bridging that connection from sim racing to real world racing. I kind of have a little story about 3M. One of the first neck collars, neck braces I ever got in the entire time that I was doing karting, I borrowed from a guy at a kart track around me at New Jersey Motorsports Park, part of iRacing. I believe the only tech track left after they did all the art updating to Laguna Seca. But I remember getting my first ever neck brace and it being a 3M one. So a little bit cool to see them in a broadcast that I'm doing, and also fantastic news to hear about them increasing that partnership with sim racing.
Yeah, they've been a long-time supporter of the series. They have got sim racing gloves as well that they sell along with some other sim-related equipment. So 3M have been a massive supporter and proponent of sim racing for quite a while now, and I think a few companies like that, the apparel companies, are starting to realise what a market, an untapped market there is in sim racing.
Yeah, sim racing is a huge market. I mean, let's face it, in the world of sim racing, there are people dedicated to spend about $15 on a bunch of pixels that they can drive around some virtual racetracks. Sim racers are dedicated. I don't mean that as a bad thing. I'm absolutely suck. I mean, I bought a whole lot of stuff on iRacing, not even just for broadcasting, just to give myself the whirl of trying a new combination out. Sim racers are dedicated, and I think these brands finally realizing that sim racers and the entire group of the sim racing community, it's such an untapped market. You brought up a very good point there, Paul. So nice to see those brands decide to branch out into the sim racing world, either for the first time or just include that partnership and expand it a little bit more.
Now, I did mention when we were looking at the calendar that we are a technical round. Let's just explain that for anyone who is new to the championship, who has never watched one of these broadcasts. First of all, you're going to have an absolute thrill ride with 52 GT3 cars on the grid. We start off with a 30-minute sprint race, and that will score you championship points. We then have a spinner of a reverse grid wheel, and that will then dictate as to which position will find itself on pole position for the main race, which will be a 60-minute race with a fuel limit, a 70% fuel cell limit. So drivers will have to make a pit stop in that second race. Introduces an element of strategy into these races that you don't maybe normally see from just a single 1 hour race in GT3 machinery.
Yeah, it gives it that nice little bit of dynamic. I'm trying to figure out the best way that I can describe it. It's like making food and adding a bit more seasoning to it than you usually would. It gives it that extra depth, it gives it that extra flavor, and it gives it that spice that you usually wouldn't have if you didn't have that, like a small little sprinkling of, I don't know, paprika on it. I don't tolerate spice well at all. One time I've been to a jalapeno and got my tongue stuck to an ice pack because it was burning so much. I could just see Paul on my screen dying laughing. That did actually happen, Paul. I can attest to the fact that happened. But when it comes to this format, it adds in that nice little spice that you usually wouldn't get from an event like this.
Well, on that image, let's go and take ourselves to the grid then, and to start our way through this 52 car grid. Alessio Bonino then on pole position for 07 Racing. Great qualifying from him. He finds himself alongside Pro Championship contender Anders Meyer in that Mustang, just 7 1,000ths of a second off of pole position. Dino Lombardi for Grid & Go Esports. He's third place. Alongside him is a four-time champion in Ross McFarlane. Then it's James Boumet, another former champion. Alongside him is Daniel Ola to round out row number 3. Row 4 is Lorenzo Castellani and Alex Davidson, our reigning champion. Then it's Michael Evdoka and the first of the Pro-Ams, Joe Newman, in that Mustang. The Mustangs look really strong here today. He's on row number 5. Row 6, Nikolai Agard and Bobby Thompson. Then the next row, row 7, Arthur Fertel and Jack Sedgwick, another former pro champion there. Row number 8 with Alex Cohen and Adam Tompkins, the race winner from the last race of the season so far. David Baker and Paul Webster rounding out row number 9. Row 10 for Richard Simner and Aidan Young with Adam State and Alessandro Toccio then alongside him on row number 11. Row 12 for Jack Osborne and Adam Watson, the Pro-Am leader, down there in row number 12. 13th row, Michael Graham, Will Guthrie with the top AM driver, Dan McCauley, another Mustang there, the top AM. Alongside him is Dan Blackwell on row number 14. Row 15, Jonathan Walker and Chris Chatterton. Then it is Phil Samways, Jack London ahead of Ben Altria, Lewis Ward, Andy Shield and Simon Andre Livingston rounding out the next row. Aidan Carter and Adam Hedgecock, with row 20 being Leo Tregurtha and Jesse Payne-Wilkins. Ben Gregory and David Vey then on row number 21. 22nd row, Alex Schmidt and Luca Monroe with Taylor Lane and Cameron DeBestos, with Alistair Pollock and Paddy Faulkner then on the next row of the grid. Final 2 rows of the grid, Drew Fletcher, Jan-Man Pruis with Stephen Koenig and Tom Stanley rounding out your 52 car grid. Now, I do believe that we are missing one driver in Tom Stanley, so he's not taking the start of this race, but still a 51 car field. But look at that track temperature, Ron, 41 degrees Celsius on the track. These drivers, I know it's only a half-hour race, but they will be feeling that in that half an hour.
Yeah, they absolutely will. 41C, that's about 106 degrees Fahrenheit, I believe. That is scorching hot for these tires. They aren't going to be a solid mass by the end of this race. They're just going to be a puddle left on these tires. It is going to be a real tough ride for these racers in this 30-minute long race. We haven't really mentioned it thus far this season, Paul, but I think tire management going to play a huge role in this race that we have coming up. It may only be 30 minutes long, but you want to have the tires and the rubber underneath you to be able to compete come time for the end of this race.
Lewis Ward also missing from the start here, so hopefully nothing untoward going on there. But we are under the control of Alessio Bonino. You've got to be careful with where the pace car pulls in. You think he can back people up and then launch. Oh, have I got a story for the longer race of a race start that I started on pole position here? It all went a bit wrong. Pace car is going to head onto pit road then. We're in season 17. It's week number 4 of the World GT Championship. Pleasure to have you all along joining us here on the broadcast. The green flag is in the air and we're underway for action here from Interlagos, heading down towards the Center S for the first time. And well, we're going 2-3 wide down into turn number 1. We've got a car spun around already. Aiden Young is that car who is off. There's a few others off as well. Luca Monroe, one of them, that's off. Big drama, but no track blockage there. So we are staying green flag racing. And look at that, Dino Lombardi trying to move into second place.
And look at that, side-by-side racing heading down into turn number 4, going to push that Mustang wide, and that is still going to be some close quarter stuff. They're banging doors heading through into turn number 6 right now. Side-by-side continuing between Lombardi and Anders Meyer. Meyer on the inside line, heading off through the mid-sector of this lap. This is allowing your pole sitter of Bonino to try and drive off into the sunset as these two going side-by-side, creating a log jam of cars right behind them. Contact being made still.
Oh, those two trying to sort themselves out, and Anders Meyer, a terse flash of the headlights. He wasn't happy with that as we go through Bico de Pato, the duckbill, and then through Mergulho even into Junsao, the left-hander. I'm currently getting judged by our Brazilian broadcast producer, Hugo Luis, for my terrible pronunciations of all these corner names, but I don't care. I'm British. As we go on up through the top of the hill then, it is Alessio Bonino who is leading this race by 1.4 seconds. That's what all that fighting between Lombardi and Anders Meyer did to them. It separated them out a little bit further back. Another 07 car trying to make some moves, and that's Daniel Ola and Lorenzo Castellani fighting it out for 7th place.
And the close quarters racing still continuing at the start of this second lap. It being a 30-minute long race, it feels like these drivers have basically no time to try and get the moves done. So they may be forcing the issue with a bit more aggression and anger behind the wheel that they have done in previous races side by side, continuing heading down into turn number 4. I gotta say, on the corner name pronunciation discussion, Paul, that's exactly why I'm not going to pronounce any of them. I'm just going to go with the corner numbers and the corner numbers alone.
As I go through Ferradura then up the hill then onto the brakes, this tight and twisty infield. It's really a track of 3 different portions, and there's Luca Monroe, one of those drivers who got caught up in that turn 1 incident, had to take to the runoff. And Ron, come on, you got it right eventually last time. What is that again?
You're testing my memory here, Paul. You're asking me this question from 2 weeks ago to a person who probably can't even remember where his keys are at the present moment. I believe that's Evie? I think that's the right name. I may get flamed to the YouTube chat. Someone just spun heading through the bottom end of the circuit. That's through the turn number 11 and 12 section, heading into Jungso of turn number 12. I just jinxed myself there. Hopefully I won't get flamed by a producer, but that was a spin heading off through that section. Very easy to have an off-track moment. Heading through there, the first driver we see going off there.
Yeah, Alistair Pollock. You could just see how the back end just went. I wonder if he's having to run that Porsche with a bit less downforce. You are correct, it wasn't Evie, by the way. As we go into Desida del Lago, and through the double apex left-hander, uphill, undulation, different sections of track being different styles here. So you've got a lot of high speed through the final sector and the first sector of the lap, and then you've got this technical infield. You've got to compromise how your car is set up, haven't you?
Yeah, it's a double-edged sword in terms of trying to nail down the setup around this track, because you got those long flat out blasts. I mean, hey, take the end of this lap, for instance. Coming out of turn number 12, you're flat out all the way up into the braking zone of turn number 1. So that takes up a decent chunk of the lap, but through the tight and twisties in the infield, some of the fast corners, some of the medium speed, and even the slow corners as well, you probably wish that you tuned the car a bit more towards handling heading through that section. It's risky trying to nail down a good setup for these cars, and some of the cars that we've got in this grid, take the Porsche for instance, which is notoriously a bit sensitive to setup changes. You want to nail down the setup as best as you possibly can. I'm sure a lot of these drivers have done tons of practice to try and fine-tune that setup as best as they possibly can, as Khan going for the dive.
Oh, that's a bit of a dive there on Michael Evdoka. Doesn't make the move stick though, so Evdoka stays ahead for the time being as they go through the left-hander at Curva do Sol, and now coming under pressure from Joe Newman, the leading Pro-Am in all of this, as Nikolai Agard right behind Joe Newman here. So the two Pro-Am leaders in first and second place in class, as there goes Drew Fletcher from Series 1 Racing around, and that was at Ferradura on that last lap. But yeah, Joe Newman's under pressure from Nikolai Agard, and those Racing Lab esports drivers in the Mustangs, they really do seem to like that car. They seem to like those long wheelbase cars, because prior to the Mustang, they were going around in the BMWs.
I was just going to mention that a couple of moments ago, Paul. I remember covering some of these Racing Lab esports drivers in a different GT3 series on iRacing, and they always campaigned those BMWs, and I don't know what it was, despite the fact that BMW feels like a giant, it feels like a house compared to some of the cars that we've got in this grid. Those BMWs always used to be quick from Racing Lab esports. They contended for championships, despite the fact that those cars, the BMWs at least, mainly known for having straight line speed, not the best handlers. But on a racetrack like this, they are feeling both ends of the coin when it comes to the difficulties and the advantages of driving in that Mustang. This race still has not settled down though, as we've got side-by-side racing going on all throughout the field.
Alex Schmidt, favorite of the YouTube chat, is coming through the field, currently in 28th right now, so that's a gain of 15 places as Taylor Lane, look at this, all over the back of Schmidt here, down towards Interlagos, onto the brakes, but not able to get ahead of Alex. So Alex Schmidt moving his way through the field. Good number of positions gained, although I would always say in that situation, I'm sure as a driver you'd prefer to be starting further up the field than having to work your way through.
Yeah, that's the thing when it comes to situations like this. I feel like I don't have much room to judge. I'll hold off on that point. Side-by-side racing for the lead with Dino Lombardi and Alessio Bonino. And look at that, Anders Meyer sideways, slideways, coming at turn number 11, nearly ending up off the track. Thankfully for him, I think he avoided the slowdown. That Mustang racing with a duo of Acuras at the front of this field. This is some real intense stuff.
Now, what's happened to Bonino there? Because he was, a few laps ago, 1.4 seconds ahead. Well, now he's lost the lead, so he must have had something happen that last lap, although looking at the lap times, not really. So yeah, definitely issues for Bonino, but Dino Lombardi, you don't need to ask him twice. He comes through, takes the lead of the race. Of course, Lombardi, the winner of race number 3, so round number 3 of the season at Bathurst, and also round number 1 of the season at the Nürburgring. So Lombardi trying to get back to winning ways after having a winning-less Silverstone.
Yeah, trying to find his ground as it stands at the present moment. Certainly a very fast driver. Let's see if he'll be able to get onto solid footing as we continue to go throughout this race. We're less than a minute and a half away from completing the first third, and what a first third of this race it has been. We've seen some close battles for the lead, some incidents here and there, but probably not the amount of incidents that we probably had in mind around this tight, technical, and twisty circuit. Paul, I'm a little bit surprised that outside that drama heading through the Santa S's for the first time, actually Michael Gray playing me like a fiddle as he goes off the track in the 273, but a surprisingly clean start here in Interlagos.
That looked like he had damage already and he's just pulled the car over there. The way that car behaved, it looked like he maybe had some suspension damage or something like that. Now, if you're Anders Meyer in all of this, you're thinking, I want to get past Alessio right now in that 07 racing car, and down the inside, Ross McFarlane on James Boumet. Now, these two had a proper ding-dong fight for the championship a couple of seasons ago. Ross saw an opportunity there, and Alex Davidson now can see a chance on his teammate.
And as we see this ding-dong fight continue to go on, hang down into turn number 4, I gotta wonder who's going to get the achievement ding and who's going to get donged as we continue to see this side-by-side racing nearly flare up. Coming out of turn number 5 right now, this small low flat out list between 5 and 6. It may not seem like much, but we've seen some drivers go for some moves heading off into turn number 6, which considering is a medium speed corner going up the hill, a little bit off camber at times as well. That's a really tough spot to try and get a move done, but just because it's tough doesn't mean these drivers aren't going to go for it.
Yeah, they will go for it indeed. Just getting word that there we go. It was connection problems for Michael Gray, so he's having issues and decided to pull over here in this one. So Dino Lombardi is pulling a gap at the front of the field, 1.1 seconds. Anders Meyer pulling out all the way over the curb and the grass creek there on the exit of Junsao. He's trying to carry as much speed as possible in that Mustang. The grunt on that car is tremendous, but the problem is that Acura is a really quick piece of machinery. Meyer, it's not quite close enough to make the move into the Center S.
I think we saw the same thing there a couple of moments ago, Paul. I think Anders Meyer briefly thought about going for it, that or he just wiggled really badly heading into the braking zone into turn number 1. Such a contrast between these two cars because you got the meaty Mustang and the Acura, which is rather nimble, doesn't have the legs over the Mustang down a straight line, but here we go down the outside, heading into turn number 4. Look at Anders Meyer trying to get that move done on Benino. He's playing a dangerous game, though. Look at James Boumet. He may try and get a move done on him. Let's see Myers on the inside line heading off into turn number 6. There's some close quarter stuff, and now the shoe's on the other foot. Instead of Myers getting hung out to dry, it's going to be Benino getting hung out.
Oh, Meyer went a little deep through the right-hander there. Maybe gives an opportunity, but Boumet and Benino, they're going to carry on the fight now into the right-hander at Bica de Pato. And Boumet is through in that McLaren, so, or is he? There's still a slight overlap. I think now he's done it. Maybe a look down the inside for Benino. I don't know what it is, but Benino looked super quick at the start of the race. Is it a case of he's maybe used his tyres a little bit early, got aggressive to try and pull out the gap at the start, and is now paying for it?
And that's a great point to raise there, Paul. We mentioned right before we grabbed the green flag about the track temperatures. Those track temperatures continuing to increase. I believe it'd be now about 42 degrees C as we see them side by side heading down into turn number 1. That right there is a fight between Alessio Benino and Ross McFarlane. Should be noted that McFarlane was the fastest driver in the practice session earlier on. It's that 127 car. Very, very quick. But those track temperatures continuing to increase under the Brazilian sun. And I gotta wonder if we saw Benino cook his tires in the opening half of this race.
Well, somebody in the YouTube chat saying 42-degree track temp is stupid high. I think my record here in the Porsche Taccar Esports Super Cup, when Kevin Ellis Jr. got a win, sensational winners, down the inside goes McFarlane. That gives him the outside for the left. but if he can hang it there, which he can't, that could have given him the inside line for Bika de Pato. But the record that I've seen here personally is 58 degrees Celsius track temperature, so it can get a lot hotter than this.
Yeah, I was actually just pulling up my phone trying to get the Fahrenheit to Celsius conversion. I was doing a broadcast of a spec race or Ford race at Winton not terribly long ago, and yeah, it was around about the same 138 degrees Fahrenheit, which is just absolutely absurd. I usually start to melt around about 80, so 138 degrees, that's nearly 59 C. That is absolutely stupid for track temperatures. I think by the end of that race, the tires, I couldn't even say they were puddles on the ground. They were completely evaporated by that point. Visibility going down as the tires got eviscerated around that racetrack. But this track temperature ain't any better either. 109 degrees Fahrenheit. Wouldn't walk around this track barefoot if you gave me $1 million to do it, because that just does not seem like a very fun way for me to spend my Mondays, as we nearly saw some side-by-side racing involving Benito heading down into turn number 4.
If you look behind, Castellani's keeping the two WSR eSports butt kicker drivers of McFarlane and Davidson honest. Here we are on board with Castellani then. 7th place for him, has been able to jump Daniel Urlap in the standings and moving forward in this race. Worth pointing out, still in Pro-Am lead, it's Joe Newman. He's now got Jack Sedgwick between himself and Nikolai Agard. So Newman will be trying to keep Sedgwick there to keep himself under a little less pressure in Pro-Am from Agard. And in 3rd place in Pro-Am, it is Jack Osborne, again in one of those Atomic Esports cars. In AM, I can tell you Dan McCall is up 6 places into 21st. That's your leader in AM. The next best AM driver is Simon Andre Livingston in 27th, and Aidan Carter, 3rd place in AM, 29th. So that's how things stand at the moment. To the inside, Ross McFarlane, it's a late move. Can he make that move stick? The answer is not quite yet. Oh, if he could keep alongside through Descender de Lago, through Curva de Sol, sorry, he could get the inside for Descender de Lago. Down we go then. It's 207 cars versus 2 WSR Esports butt kicker cars. Into the left-hander, the double apexer, and through goes McFarlane. Davidson can't quite get the job done with his teammate.
And they are still side-by-side coming out of the Descida de Lago section, heading through the infield section right now. I believe actually the pronunciation is Descida de Lago, but here we go. Side-by-side racing down into turn number 7. This is really close between these drivers through this tight, twisty infield bit. Feels like you're not going quick at all, considering some of the flat-out blasts that followed, but still a good spot to go side-by-side with. Here we go side-by-side between those two, right at the back of shot, heading through. That is into turn number 10. Not close enough to get the moves done. However, side-by-side racing continuing as they head down the hill into Zhongsao.
Yeah, Benino's really struggling out there in his Acura and is really not having a lot of fun out there. Jack Sedgwick around the outside at Zhongsao. If he can carry that speed all the way up the hill here and across the start and finish line, he's got the outside line going into the Senna S, and look who's right there now behind Newman, Nikolai Agard. This is a fight for Pro-Am lead, along with Jack Sedgwick, a pro driver. Into the Senna S we go. Sedgwick still there, hanging it out wide. Oh, just gets his nose chopped off by Newman. And now Agard is coming under pressure from Adam Tompkins. Remember, race winner at Silverstone last time out in that Altitude Esports car. And he'll be looking forward in all of that. Ola Daniel has dropped down the order a little bit, I can tell you, down to 10th place. So something's happened to him in the last couple of minutes. But lap times are starting to fade here as we're heading into that final third of the race.
if we listen very faintly as we see this side-by-side racing involving Ola Daniel heading down into the corner. Look at that, Bobby Thompson, Ola Daniel. Oh, they nearly came to blows. That could have ended in tears for the two of them. Ola Daniel getting that moved on to keep his way in 10th. But if we listen very, oh my God, they're bump drafting heading down into turn number 10. That is not the ideal strategy at all. Eventually, I'll be able to get this point out as these drivers continue to go side-by-side, heading down the hill through turn number 11. They finally single file out. If we listen very faintly, Paul, I think we could hear these tires screeching in agony, which is part of the reason why these lap times have ballooned. These cars aren't driving the same way they did 20 minutes ago, without a question or a shadow of a doubt.
And if we end up with similar conditions for the next race, then we could end up an hour-long race. Don't forget those pit stops. I think you will be seeing tyres being changed. Bobby Thompson all over the back of Daniel Ola there into the Senna S. And Bobby Thompson was pulling out some of the dark arts of British touring car racing there. A little bump and run into Pico de Pato. Black flag for David Vey. He must have hit the incident limit. We've also got mechanical warning flags for Adam Hedgecock and Alex Schmidt, who's taken a tour back to pit road. So not a good day for those two out there in this opening race. But remember, we have one more race coming up for you. Oh, so Schmidt gets turned around and then into the door.
Quick little bang. It's unfortunate. It's close quarters racing, though. In GT3 racing, you can see some contact being made quite often, and sadly, it's some driver is going to get the short end of the stick in all of that. But hey, it's racing. It's close quarter stuff. Things will happen from time to time. Getting back now to live action and seeing the side-by-side racing continuing, following Jack Sedgwick in that number 11 car, currently running in 13th of all the drivers currently. That Corvette, that blacked out Corvette, that's a very cool looking car as far as I'm concerned. I may be a little bit biased since I'm an American and a GM guy, but that blacked out Corvette just looks so awesome. Got a red, white, and blue livery on the Mustang, and then a blacked out Corvette, maybe even in like matte black. That would be a very good looking race car.
As we head down to turn 1, Daniel Ola and Bobby Thompson, these two are having a truly epic fight, and that's over 10th place right now to go through the Senna S into Curva do Sol, and then heading down the hill towards Descida de Lago. And look at that, Thompson all the way onto the grass and then pulling out to the opposite side. Remember, professional racing driver Bobby Thompson here against one of the quick drivers in sim racing in Daniel Ola. And Thompson just has the... Oh, no! Oh, you could see that coming. He just had a nose on the inside. Daniel Ola comes across. Contact is made. And I'm sorry to say, in my opinion, just from that one look, Daniel Ola is the one at fault there.
I gotta say, with how hard those two drivers were battling, something like that felt like more of an inevitability than anything else. I'm just just rewinding back like 15 seconds before that. Bobby Thompson nearly went off into the dirt, heading down that back straightaway into turn number 4 to try and get that move done. So they were battling super hard, battling tooth and nail, scraping and clawing for every spot that they could. Something like that, it was bound to happen at some point. Unfortunate that did happen, but with how hard they were battling, as I said, it felt like more of an inevitability than anything else.
Well, here we go. Here's another look then. So Bobby Thompson is there. He's alongside and he has got an overlap. Oh, does Thompson come in towards the middle? Is it just two cars coming into each other there? We'll look from above. Thompson comes off the curb and maybe Thompson actually looking at that from a second view, just coming off of the right hand side a bit more.
As Adam Watson very slow heading through turn at number 3. I gotta say, from my perspective, looking at those replays, there's contact being made heading down into Descida de Lago. That's gonna send one of those cars off Anders Meyer with a little bit of scraping on that race car as a result of all that. Actually, no, that was not Anders Meyer. My apologies. The side-by-side racing continuing. We may have to take a look at a replay, but getting back to the point that I was going to raise about that incident, it looked like two cars just fighting for the same piece of real estate on the track. Unfortunate, nevertheless.
It was Bobby Thompson again who got taken off there as Nikolai Agard has just dropped back positions. Now, is he trying to redress things here? Is he just trying to keep out the way? Either way, I tell you what, there's going to be some talking happen. There you go, bang. But you can't exactly miss the front of that Mustang. It is quite a vast thing, is that. And yeah, Bobby Thompson not having a good day at the office, that is for sure. David Baker, 17th to the back of a queue of cars. It's got Adam State, Nikolai Agard, Richard Simner, Jack Osborne, Adam Tompkins and Jack Sedgwick leading that queue of cars. Baker, well, he is working his way forward then ahead of Adam State. Change of position between the two WSR Esports drivers.
We're getting to the end of this race now with under 6 minutes left to go in this 30-minute long race, a race which has seen a lot of hecticness all throughout. Dino Lombardi, though, kind of escaping all of it. He's leading this race right now, has a pretty significant cushion back to Anders Meyer in P2. We've seen a lot of shuffling. Ross McFarlane, who was a driver who I'm still going to be keeping my tabs on come time for the second race, finds himself in third. He just got a move done as James Boumet. Actually, I think it was a brief... I think James Boumet hit 88 miles an hour and found himself going back to the Neolithic period.
Yeah, I think that was just a connection thing there for Boumet. And that means that he just quickly disappeared from our view, but he is there. So, anyway, up the hill, we've got 5 minutes remaining. Dino Lombardi leads by 3 seconds over Anders Meyer and James Boumet that we're looking at right now in this race. But Ross McFarlane a little bit further back downfield. There is Dino Lombardi in that grid and go car, and certainly doing a sterling job up at the front of the field. In your Pro-Am, it is still Joe Newman, who's now up to 10th place with all that drama that was happening further down in your order with Daniel Erla and Bobby Thompson. It does mean, though, that Jack Osborne is 13th and Richard Simner now up into 14th place. They are second and third in Pro-Am in their class. In AM, it's Dan McCauley, who's made it up 9 places now, up into 18th place. The next best AM driver is Aidan Carter in 25th, and then Simon Andre Livingston in 27th. Third place in AM. As we're looking a little bit further back, Ben Altria then, one of our AM drivers. Got David Vey ahead, who has had a drive-through penalty. Paul Webster ahead of them, who had to take a pit stop on lap 1 because he got involved in that shenanigans at turn 1.
Yeah, those shenanigans heading down into the first corner. I can't necessarily say that I wasn't expecting it, but it was messy regardless. I gotta say, these drivers very thankful the fact that the Senna S at the very start of this lap does have the runoff area that it does, both on the inside and the outside, because we saw drivers spear off the track and scatter about. It's like you got a room full of cats and dropped a bag of cucumbers in the middle of it, looking at some side-by-side racing, maybe developing with 2 McLarens in the mid-pack through the mid-sector of this lap. There they go, side-by-side to turn number 10.
That's got to be Ben Gregory and Dan Blackwell then together. Ben Gregory, you can't miss him. He's got the rainbow car. And, well, Ben representing Full Tilt this year. And he's working his way up the hill once again, ahead, as I say, of Dan Blackwell and Paul Webster. It's a whole queue of cars further down in your field. It's McLaren, Acura, Ford Mustang and Acura all together on track. Gregory deciding to go defensive into the Senna S. And the track keeps on getting hotter. 46.7 degrees Celsius out there. It is toasty.
Holy cow, that's 116 degrees Fahrenheit. If someone paid me $2 million to live in a place that gets anywhere close to that temperature, I wouldn't take that in a million years. That is scorching hot. These tires, they are burning. I remember one time, back in my karting days, there was an event that I ran where I think the track temperature was probably around 95, and I felt like I was driving on super glue. But around about that point, go a little bit over, you reach the point where it's way too hot for these drivers. It's way too hot for these tires. It gets too greasy, and then it feels like you're driving in a slip and slide more than anything else.
I will say I've been to Austin, Texas in the middle of July and the middle of August. I've experienced 42 degrees air temperature. The ground temperature was on the pavement was absolutely sensational as well. We did have, when I was at Monza a couple of years ago on pit road, we had 50 degrees Celsius pit road temperature. That was a very, very hot day, that is for sure. We're on to what I believe is potentially, no, we're actually not going to be the final lap. We're going to get one more lap out of this one, I do believe, given that the race leader is just getting towards Pico de Pato, and we've got a black flag for Ben Gregory now, the latest one to reach that instant limit. There's been a number of drivers in this race reach the incident limit here today, Ron, and with just 16 incidents across a 30-minute race, you're just slightly over one incident every 2 minutes.
And around a racetrack like this, where it is so tempting to try and use all the real estate you can, as contact being made. That was 3 McLarens, I believe, heading off into turn number 1. Oh, that was a sketchy rejoin if ever I saw it. A code brand moment for the car that nearly came to blows with that driver rejoining the racetrack. But 3 cars having a moment, heading down into turn number 1, spearing all of them off the track in their own ways. But getting back to the point I was going to raise, talking about the incident points, got to be a big factor in the race that we have coming up. This track just invites these drivers to hit a little bit of that curb, go off into the dirt, and run wide through some of these corners to try and carry as much speed as we can. But I believe with 0 seconds left on the clock, that white flag is in the air, and to ring in this white flag lap, we've got some side-by-side racing heading off into turn 1.
Yeah, absolutely. Further down in your top 20 then is a number of cars, one of which is Nikolai Agard with Richard Simner right in front of him. 2 Mustangs together. You've got David Baker and Adam State, who's on behind him. But still, Simner staying ahead for the time being in that DCW Racing car as they go up towards Ferradura. Final lap of the race then. And these two going to be embroiled in that battle yet some more. Well, Dino Lombardi is coming into Junsao for the final time in this race. He's got to climb up the hill. There he is in that grid and go car. And Dino Lombardi, well, he won the opening race of the season. He won the 3rd race of the season. Now he's a race winner in round number 7 of the season. Dino Lombardi for Grid & Go Esports takes the pro win and the overall win here today. Joe Newman, he is going to be your leading Pro-Am driver. 10th place overall. This is a great result for Joe, finishing where he started in this race, but he'll be happy with that because he's taking some big points in Pro-Am across the line to take the win in Pro-Am. Then looking a little bit further back then in Am, Dan McCauley in Am, he has just come across the line right now. There he is. He's your winner in Am for Series 1 Racing. Ron, we had plenty of action in that opening race, and we've got an hour-long race to come yet.
The hour-long race where we're going to have to think about a lot of stuff. Got to think about those ever-increasing track temperatures. We may have a photo finish forming here, side by side. Nope, we do not. Well, still very close at the end of a 30-minute long race. But for that 60-minute long race that we have coming up, have to worry about the strategy. Big factor in the second race here for this technical race meeting here for the World Sim Racing GT3 Championship. Got to worry about that. Got to worry about the track temperatures. Have to worry about those incident points as well. We saw drivers pick up a black flag in this 30-minute long race. We saw that in 30. How many are we going to see in 60? It's going to be a real challenge for these drivers coming up. I'm really looking forward to it, but I gotta say, I think my blood pressure and resting heart rate here in the commentary booth is probably a lot lower than the drivers out there on the track. They have a lot to think about coming into the second race.
I'm just trying to find out what the instant limit is for the technical round of this, but we'll look at it. 17 is the reverse grid, so let's see through the results. And Dino Lombardi, the race winner, by 2.5 seconds over Anders Meyer, then with James Boumet in third place. Ross McFarlane ahead of Alex Davidson, Lorenzo Castellani, Alessio Bonino, Alex Cohen, Michael Evdoka, and then your top Pro-Am, Joe Newman, rounding out your top 10. Then it's Jack Sedgwick ahead of Adam Tompkins, with Jack Osborne then second place in Pro-Am ahead of Richard Simner, third place in Pro-Am. Nikolai Agard ahead of David Baker, Adam State. Dan McCauley is the top AM driver in 18th place. That's a gain of... looking at the timing screen, 9 places for Dan. Adam Watson and Phil Samways rounding out your top 20. 21st then for Daniel Ola, who had to do a bit of a recovery drive from that incident with him and Bobby Thompson. Jonathan Walker then ahead of Leo Tregurtha with Alessandro Toccio. Then Aidan Carter, Taylor Lane, Simon Andre Livingston, Paddy Faulkner, Andy Shield and Jesse Payne Wilkins rounding out the top 30. 31st for Luca Monroe, who got caught up in that lap 1 incident along with Paul Webster, Ben Altria, David Vey, got a drive-through penalty, Aidan Young, Will Guthrie, Jan-Man Pruis, Ben Gregory, although those timings look a little bit funky there, Dan Blackwell and Chris Chatterton. Ahead of Karen De Bastos, Jack London, Steve Koenig, Adam Hedgecock and Alistair Pollock. 1 lap down was Drew Fletcher, and then those drivers who did not finish: Bobby Thompson, Lewis Ward, Alex Schmidt and Arthur Fertel. And the final 2 drivers, Michael Gray, who was the last of the runners who had issues during that race, and Tom Stanley did not take the race start. So there we go, 30-minute sprint race done and dusted, and what an exciting race that was. But the big talking point really was the fall off, I would say, of Alessio Bonino. I think he would be very disappointed with how that race went.
Yeah, I gotta say, leaving that race, if you're Alessio Bonino, you may have to scratch your head a little bit, trying to figure out what exactly went wrong during that first race. Was it a matter of tire management? We raised that during the opening stages of that race. Was it something setup related? Did he just not have the pace to try and remain in that same spot? There's got to be some head scratching for Bonino for sure, but I'm sure he's probably going to be thinking of all that stuff right now and trying to improve on those changes and make those changes heading into the second race.
Yeah, there's going to be a few people who look at that and think, do you know what, we could have done a little bit better there. But there's going to be some very pleased people out there as well. Alex Cohen, gain of 7 places. Jack Osborne gained 10 places. Dan McCauley, as I said, top AM driver, gained 9 places. Phil Samways 11, Leo Tregurtha 16. The biggest mover of the field, Paddy Faulkner, who finished in 28th, 20 places gained. The problem is he finished 28th, so that tells you how bad his starting position was.
Yeah, it's... I mean, still credit where credit's due to him, cutting his way through the field like a hot knife through butter. That still takes a lot of confidence and a lot of skill to be able to do that. The qualifying, though, putting yourself in a position like that where you have to cut your way through the field like a hot knife through butter to even score good points, not ideal. I'm sure he's probably going to be hoping to hit the ground running and get some better qualifying throughout the rest of the season, because as much as that's impressive, still not very ideal.
Now, the big winner out of the reverse grid draw, with it being 17, is Adam State. He's going to be starting on pole position in his Porsche, and David Baker alongside him. Now, those two, both WRC esports drivers, they'll be maybe working together to try and work that the lead of the race and to try and keep themselves at the front of the field. If you're Dan McCauley, you must be spitting feathers because you're the top AM and you just by 1 place missed out on a pole position.
Yeah, that's gonna sting a little bit, but hey, it's a world of racing. It all comes down to just a couple of lines of coding and some random number generation. So if you're him, you're probably feeling that RNGesus does not smile upon you very lightly there, but still, for the drivers that will be starting the second race at the front of the field, it's going to be a good race for them. We've seen in races past, and just from my time covering reverse grid races, you find yourself in those situations where two teammates are running at the front, and it's a very good road heading through that race, but still 60 minutes in front of us.
Dan McCauley, actually in the YouTube chat, saying he's incredibly happy not to be in that reverse grid. Okay, I know where I would rather be if I was starting this race. Right, anyway, do stick around, everyone, because after this short break, we're going to be getting ourselves ready for race number 2 of the evening. That's round number 8 of the World GT Championship, an hour-long race with a pit stop. You don't want to miss this one. Stick around.
All of them as well. What a move for the 48. Oh, look at this. And onto the straight they come.
Brilliant move there from the number 40 to make it through. That left-hander sliding up the inside, going up now over Hawthorne Hill, down Pilgrim's Drop, and it's brilliant stuff here at Brands Hatch.
Welcome back then to coverage of the World GT Championship Season 17 here on RaceSpotTV. This is rounds number 7 and 8 here today, and the second race is going to be a 1-hour race with a pit stop involved in this one. And I think Ron Mounds, who joins myself, Paul Smith, on commentary, I think the drivers will be glad for the opportunity to maybe get some fresh rubber on during the race.
Yeah, I think they're very much so going to look forward to that. In the 30-man race that we just had wrap up a couple of moments ago, we saw tire wear play a huge factor in just that race. That's half the distance of what we got coming up. See, I can do math from time to time. So these tires, by the end of this 60-minute long race, if these drivers decide against swapping, I can't even say that they'll be driving around on stones. It'll feel like they'll be driving around on like a bag of feathers that someone doused in 5W30 motor oil. That's exactly what's going to be feeling like for these drivers if they decide, if they're crazy enough to run this entire race that we have coming up on one set of tires. I do not envy those drivers' positions at all. Ignore the voice crack.
I think that you'll definitely see drivers take rear tires in this race. Absolutely, you would take rears in this race. You don't want to take one side tires because you would unsettle the balance of the car for too long, I do believe. Even though, with it being an anti-clockwise track, you are turning left a lot more than you're turning right, and those right-hand tires will be taking a battering in this race. I still think the rears would be the way to go because of there being some slow speed stuff where you need that acceleration to go up to speed on the high speed stuff.
I gotta say, in terms of picking front tires over rear tires, I would definitely prefer the rears, because if you have front tires that are really sticky and rear tires that just feel like stones, you'll turn into the corner. Let's say, no, pick any single corner around this racetrack, turn in, the front tires will be like, yeah, man, I'm really looking forward to this, and the rear tires are just gonna go like, and then you'll be screwed. So I would much rather have that stickiness coming out of the corners, not have to worry about the rear end having a mind of its own. Maybe deal with a little bit of understeer, which was never something that I preferred in my own racing adventures, both in the sim and in real life as well. But of the two options, I would rather have to go a little bit slower heading off into some of the corners and have that rear grip to be able to get up to speed, instead of having no rear grip at all and just looping it at every single time I turn the wheel more than 5 degrees.
Well, the drivers are using this opportunity to get as much practice in as possible. They only get a 10-minute warm-up session here. And when conditions are like this, you want to just try and get as much practice as possible. It's almost like if it was a wet race. You want to be out there as long as possible, just feeling what the car behaves like in these conditions, don't you?
Yeah, that's exactly right. Just give yourself as much of a perspective as you can heading into a race like this. Seat time can be super important for these drivers, and I'm sure they're going to use this practice session that we're still in the midst of right now to get as much practice as they can. We got a challenging race in front of us. Those track temperatures going to be scalding hot. Those tires going to be screeching in agony come time for the end of lap 4. It's a race where these drivers are going to have to do a lot more mental exercises than they probably would usually have in mind. The best way I can describe a race like this, it's like trying to juggle chainsaws and hula hoop at the same time. That's exactly how these drivers are going to be feeling.
As the track temperature in warm-up comes up to 50 degrees Celsius, that's halfway to boiling a cup of tea. Is that so? Yeah, definitely some hot conditions on track for those drivers. Well, the practice session, the warm-up before the race is now done, and the drivers will get themselves set to the grid to be able to start this second race of the evening. It's going to be round number 8 of the World GT Championship. And well, on the grid, on pole position then, it's going to be Adam State, who starts on the front row with David Baker. Nikolai Agard and Richard Simner are going to continue their fight from that first race of the afternoon with Jack Osborne and Adam Tompkins rounding out the front 3 rows. Fourth row of the grid, Jack Sedgwick and Joe Newman with Michael Evdoka and Alex Cohen on row number 5. Row 6 for Benino and Castellani. All of those 07 cars together could be crucial for them working their way through the field. Alex Davidson, Ross McFarlane, the two teammates then on row number 7 with row 8 of James Boumet and Anders Meyer. Dino Lombardi, your race winner, alongside Dan McCauley on row number 9. Row 10 for Adam Watson and Phil Samways with Daniel Erla and Jonathan Walker. Leo Trigurtha and Alessandro Toggio then rounding out number 12 with the 13th row of Aidan Carter and Taylor Lane. Row number 14 is Simon Andre Livingston and Paddy Faulkner, with Andy Shield and Jesse Payne Wilkins rounding out row number 15. 16th row then, it's Luca Monroe and Paul Webster with Ben Altria and David Vey, and then Aidan Young, Will Guthrie on the next row of the grid. Yaman Pruis and Ben Gregory on row number 19 with the 20th row of Dan Blackwell and Chris Chatterton. Karen DeBastos and Jack London share the next row of the grid. Row number 22 is Steve Koenig and Adam Hedgecock, with Alistair Pollock and Drew Fletcher ahead of Bobby Thompson. Watch out for him charging through the field, and Arthur Thurtle. We have lost a couple of drivers. Michael Gray is the last car on the grid. Drivers getting themselves prepared. Oh, it has cooled down a little bit. We are mostly cloudy skies, so you will see cloud cover come over at times, but no precipitation expected in this race here today. So it's hot. It's actually not sticky. It's only 40% relative humidity. That's actually quite dry for this area of the world.
Yeah, that is rather dry in terms of the relative humidity. Very happy, I'm sure some of these drivers are, the fact that the relative humidity is as low as it has. We've seen some high humidity over some of the previous races this season, to the point where for these drivers it's probably felt like they've been driving through bowls of soup. But with the conditions that we've got right now, that track temperature, it is still boiling hot. I gotta say, if we did have rain in the forecast, I'm pretty sure the rainwater would immediately boil off as soon as it hit the track, just start pitter-pattering and steaming away. It's scalding hot for these drivers. The track temperatures round about the same as they were at the worst in that 30-minute long race that we have coming up, and we've got a much bigger challenge and a much longer road for these drivers to try and traverse. I'm going to keep marching to the beat of this drum. Ross McFarland is a driver that I'm definitely going to be keeping my eyes on. Was fastest in both the practice sessions, so showed some speed in that first race. He's going to be starting in fourth like he did in the first one. Let's see if with those extra 30 minutes he'll be able to make his way up to the front.
Well, apparently they cook eggs on the asphalt during the summer in Brazil. I'm sure that breaches various hygiene codes here in the UK. And yes, Mark Fletcher, it would of course be Yorkshire tea, because as Sean Bean said, do it for Yorkshire. Right, anyway, the pace car is about to pull in to pit road and will be under the control of Adam State for this round number 8 of the World GT Championship here on RaceSpotTV. Paul Smith, Ron Mounds, and we've got green flag racing. We're underway then at Interlagos, heading down towards turn number 1. Great launch from State as we go 2-3 wide down into the Center S for the first time. And everybody seems to be behaving, although I say that as Phil Samways goes, we've got more drama for Ben Altria, but we stay green flag racing for the time being.
And side-by-side racing continuing, heading on to the back straightaway, about to careen our way into Hasita Dalaga at the very start of this race. Look at these drivers going side-by-side, nearly 3 wide as well in certain parts of this field. Looking at these racers entering the mid-sector of this lap, still trying to battle and claw for every single position that they can. But it's a reverse grid pole man, Adam State, still withstanding that challenge from his front row sitter, David Barker.
As Simon Andre Livingston and Will Guthrie both have mechanical warning flags, so they have picked up serious damage. They can get a free repair in these races, so it's not the end of the world for them. Dino Lombardi down the inside into Binka Dabata. Well, he's alongside. Has he made the move stick? Yes he has. Good move then from the Grid and Go driver. He's trying to work his way through is Lombardi. He's currently up 3 places into 14th.
And making moves early. A lot of these drivers deciding to, now is the time to pounce. It's good to do it while the field is still packed together like a bunch of sardines in a tin. However, you don't want to use up your stuff too early, otherwise you're going to be in for a world of hurt. Look at this though. Holy cow.
That's Jack Sedgwick, former champion, making the move down the inside of Richard Simner, and Alex Cohen makes a move as well. We got drama in Atomic Esports car. Oh, can avoid it. Dino Lombardi's continuing his fight through the field. That's up 6 places now for Dino Lombardi. There's a reason why he is one of the best drivers in the world of sim racing here on iRacing, and he's proven it once again, working his way through the field here on.
And cutting his way through the field like a hot knife through butter at this stage of the race, making moves and making hay while the sun is still shining. Side by side racing, heading off into turn number 5. These drivers deciding to now is the time to go, is going off the track in dramatic fashion. That's one of the McLarens. Not sure who that was, spearing off the track into turn number 5, avoiding contact with the wall, but there's already some significant damage on that race car, so I don't think that slide was the only bit of drama.
Giuseppe Wilkins it was in the full tilt car, and we've got cars at a standstill. That's Cameron De Bastos, so please don't say that's your teammate of Jan-Man Pruis. Please don't say the two of them have got together. The one driver that you do not want to hit is your teammate.
That is going to be a real tense discussion at the end of this race. Maybe a good thing that happens early on, so maybe the wounds can be healed by the end of the race. Either way, though, let's take a look at a lot of replays of the drama that we've had at the start of this race. Look at some close quarter stuff, and that was a drama that took out one of the Mustangs. That was rather bizarre. It didn't hit the barrier, and that rear wing just popped off like a misshapen Lego. That was a bizarre moment hanging through the set asses as we take a look and see that moment for Jesse Payne Wilkins.
Yeah, that was just turning in when there was a car there alongside, and I think we're okay. The teammates didn't hit each other, but they had to just get out. All 3 of them getting affected there by that one. Steve Koenig as well getting involved in all of that. So yes, that was suboptimal for that outfit, and that means that they have had issues, but they do carry on in this race. Looking forward, Michael Ovdoka, he's in 9th place behind Joe Newman right now. Joe Newman second in Pro-Am behind Richard Simner, the leading Pro-Am driver in all of this field. And those Mustangs this week, that Mustang and the Acura really do seem like the cars to be in.
It's so interesting, the fact that those two are the cars to beat, considering the fact that the Mustang and the Acura, I don't think there's any overlap between those two cars, despite the outside the fact that they have 4 wheels. There is nothing that you can really discern between the two of them. One is small, low, sleek through the air. The other is a big, bad American muscle car, a bit chunky in size, but those two seem to be the cars to beat here at Interlagos. It's quite fitting, ain't it, Paul? The fact that around a racetrack like this, where you've got those long flat-out blasts and those fast sections, along with some tight, twisty, and technical ones, the fact that of a track with 2 different aspects to it, you've got 2 different cars that occupy 2 different ends of the spectrum, being the 2 to be in.
Absolutely. So, as we calm things down to a degree at this stage, not really, but things have calmed down a little bit. It's not quite as chaotic as right at the start. We are 5.5 minutes into this hour-long race. Remember, the cars are limited to a 70% fuel cell here in this second race of the evening, which means that you're looking at around about, 40 minutes or so, 45 minutes if you can push it, on a fuel tank before you have to head onto pit road here.
Yeah, those pit stops, it is not a matter of if, it is a matter of when for these drivers, and it's another big factor in this 60-minute long race. As much as these drivers are giving us some good battles to talk about on track at the moment, the strategy call going to be important. Look at Dino Lombardi in the midst of that Hornets nest, trying to make up some moves to break his way firmly inside of that top 10.
Dino Lombardi, may I remind you, started in 17th place. He's just coming up to the outside of Joe Newman. Can he make the move? We've still got 2 wide action here as well in the pack. Oh my goodness, Lombardi up to 9th place in all of this. James Boumet is trying to be working his way through. So too is Alex Davidson. So the 3 of them, terse flash of the headlights from Lombardi. I'm sorry, Dino, but you were on the outside. You weren't getting that move stuck. Boomay still carrying on the fight then with, that'll be Michael Avdoka that he's fighting with. It's Porsche versus the Acura. Sorry, the McLaren, should I say. The McLaren does go through then on the Porsche, and one of the 07 cars, 33 of Alessio Benino, trying to follow through in all of this as well. So too is your pick, Ross McFarlane.
Yeah, McFarlane, I said earlier on in this second half of the broadcast that he was starting at 4th. No, he started 4th for the first race, started 14th for this second one after finishing 4th in the first. So let's see how McFarlane can do. I have confidence in the way he is going to be tackling this race in that 127 car. Mentioned that he had some speed in the practice sessions. Of course, practice, a totally different kettle of fish than these races, but you gotta wonder, there has to be some sort of correlation there between showing some good pace in an open practice session and showing some good pace and getting some good moves done in these races. I still have a good feeling about him. We got a lot of time left to go in this race. Haven't even ticked over the halfway mark. Haven't even ticked over the 10-minute mark in this race. So plenty of racing action left to go and plenty of opportunities for these drivers to get some moves done.
McFarlane, Meyer and Benino were 3 wide into the center S then at that point. Really good stuff between them, all able to carry on in this race as we've got a car coming off of pit road. I believe that would be Alessandro Toccio, who was just off of pit road then getting repairs done to his car. But as we head to Ferradura, well, you've got Daniel Ola here right now, the Hungarian driver, working his way through, trying to get past the 07 car that is the number 33 of Benino, and here is what's happened to Ben Altria out there.
Aranda Bowling heading down into turn number 6. You always see that inside barrier, and for as long as I've been driving around this track and seeing races around this track, I think someone's going to hit that barrier someday. That's the first time in my entire sim racing broadcasting career that someone has done it, and in the process of it, ricochets back onto the track and wipes out 4 cars in one shot. Shows you that a small little touch can snowball into a big moment, taking multiple cars out of contention.
You've obviously never seen me competing in touring car championships, because that happens pretty much every time we come here at that corner. It's one of those things. Down the inside, that's James Boumé again on Michael Avdoka, and still not able to get the job done on him as we go through the Curva del Sol and heading down towards Desierto del Lago. And these drivers fighting their way through. Michael Avdoka's lost 2 places. Joe Newman's lost 2 places. But ahead of them, Davidson, Lombardi, +4 and +9, respectively, for those 2. Adam Tompkins, we barely talked about him. He's up 3 places into 3rd place overall, the Altitude Esports driver. Doing a good job, and he's getting up there with the leaders of State and Baker as well. So Tompkins, he won at Silverstone. He's trying to prove that that was not a fluke.
Yeah, certainly showing a lot of pace as it stands at the moment in that number 17 car, slotted in 3rd as it stands currently, but still very early on into this race. Lots of opportunities for him to catch up to State and Baker and get those moves done, but we still have to worry about those pit stops as well. I've seen plenty of times, not just this season, but my entire time doing iRacing broadcasting, a race and the complexion of a race be completely altered because of a run through pit lane. As it stands currently, you see the top 3 of Adam State, David Baker, and Adam Tompkins. Come time for those pit stops, if they decide to come into the pits right now, that could be completely shuffled up. All these drivers have their own unique strategy calls. Just a lot of things can change in the blink of an eye.
As Richard Simner and Dino Lombardi fighting away, but Lombardi's now under pressure from Alex Davidson in that Porsche. So Davidson trying to do the job for Porsche here in this second race of the evening, round number 8 of season 17. I've actually got the season 5 amateur teams championship little trophy up on my shelf behind my shoulder, and It seems ever so long ago now, does that? It really does. This championship has been around for quite a while, since 2017, and they've been just growing from season to season.
I feel kind of bad asking you this here, Paul, but what year was season 5 where he got that trophy? I didn't get a chance to see that before we went live. Full transparency, folks. So I want to know what year this was, just to have full clarity.
Yes. Yes. I don't know what year it was. I just know it was season 5 of this championship, and it was.
I will say,
it was actually the team that was named after that I named of our 2 outfits that we had in Team Mad, as we go 3 wide into turn number 1. And, well, nice work done there from Boomate to work his way through. And, well, a little bit of struggle and strife then for Ross McFarlane to try and work his way past on Anders Meyer. But yes, it's the fact that I did it in a car that I named the team that makes me really proud of that one.
Yeah, I will say, if it happened before the summer of 2019, I was in middle school at that point. So this year has really been around for a while. Always good to see an iRacing series just stay around and always have the same names. I mean, Paul, you can definitely speak to this a lot more than I can, considering this is only my 3rd broadcast of this series. But a lot of these drivers and a lot of these teams have been around the block many times before with this series. So always good to have an iRacing series with consistent participation season after season and year after year.
Now, I think it was actually in the GTE, the RSR, the Porsche 911 RSR GTE car, back when, to start with, the series did transition between GT3 and GTE machinery, and I believe it was the last season that we ran GTE machinery that we won the AM Teams Championship. Enough about me, though. We're heading towards the point of the race where we can start thinking about people potentially making pit stops here, as still some more moves, as Anders Meyer losing yet another place, this time to Michael Evdoka. Meanwhile, James Boumé just made a move forward ahead as well, into 10th place ahead of Joe Newman.
And as we continue to see Myers drop down the running order lap after lap, I gotta wonder how that Mustang is handling as it stands currently. Did he possibly cook those tires in the early stages? Maybe he's taking it a little bit easy, letting everyone else push their equipment as he tries to take it a little bit careful as we are in the midpoint of this race. Never mind, though, side by side, heading down into turn number 7. That's some risky stuff heading through here. Meyer on the outside line, getting pushed off the track in the process as well. That brings up the discussion of incident points. These drivers got to be real careful in this race. They can't risk it for the biscuit or risk it for the Triscuit if they're feeling the low-calorie option, because if they do that too many times, they're going to be in for a world of hurt. A drive-through penalty around a racetrack like this is a huge kick in the shins.
I can tell you, by the way, it was 2019. Thank you very much, Mark Fletcher, for pointing that out. 2019 there, Ron. So... way to make me feel old. Thank you.
If it makes you feel any better,
no,
we'll just say this for me. For me, it was about 50 pounds ago. So we'll just leave it at. I'll make it feel a little bit better.
Michael Evdoka has decided now is the time to come onto pit road along with Lorenzo Castellani. Now, this is a question I was going to ask you, Ron, because normally with these races you want to go as long as possible to have the lightest car for as long as possible. However, when the track temperature is actually dropped to 45 degrees, is it better to get that fresher rubber on now and take advantage of that now to potentially get the jump over someone later on in the race?
I think that's a very good point that you raised there, Paul, considering the fact that these track temperatures are rapidly decreasing. I mean, not terribly long ago, it was 120 Fahrenheit, about 48 something C. It's going down now to 113. So that's a pretty significant drop as of late. So I gotta say, if I was one of these drivers, I mean, in fairness, if I was one of these drivers, I'd probably be running in 52nd, which is saying something because we only have 51 cars running here today. But I think if I was one of these drivers, I would probably do that call, because you come into the pits, you put the tires on that car, as the track continues to cool and gets a bit more grip around it, it'll feel like the tires remain in the same state that they did ever since the time you bolted them on. So obviously they won't have the same level of grip, but considering the track's going to be increasing in grip, it'll have that nice little psychological thing going on. I gotta say, I like that call to come into the pits early. Let's see if it works out for those drivers.
Well, the front six have been stuck together and in the same order for quite a while now. Adam State, David Baker, Nikolai Agard, Adam Tompkins, Alex Cohen, and then Jack Sedgwick. There you see them all on screen right now, all six of them together. But Dino Lombardi up 10 places now. He is currently lapping about 3/4 tenths of a second faster than your overall race leader. So Lombardi is gaining on that front six right now as more come onto pit road.
And more drivers deciding that now is the time to pit. I think pit lane, the hottest bit of real estate around this racetrack. Multiple drivers deciding that now is the time to pit. I gotta say, as we've gone into this stage of the race, coming up to the end of the first third of this 60-minute long race, we're also starting to see a bit of a dynamic shift. At this point, we're seeing drivers who maybe showed a bit more pace dropping back a little bit, mainly in the case of Adam Tompkins. We saw him running in third not terribly long ago, albeit he's only lost one spot, dropping down to fourth, and he's still about a half a second within striking distance of Nikolai Agard. But you see this race develop, and you see these drivers continue. Some will lose pace while the others are going to gain them, and I think we're really seeing that get put on full display as these track conditions rapidly change from where they were at the start.
You can tell that people are doing fuel saving, although a big defensive move there from Adam Tompkins. He felt under pressure from Alex Cohen behind in the 07 car. So, yeah, Tompkins in the Altitude Esports machinery feeling that pressure, and that's just given a little bit of a gap between him and Nikolai Agard. And now Cohen to the inside. Agard's looking to the inside of Baker as well into Desida del Lago. Tompkins, contact between him and Cohen, and here comes Jack Sedgwick in all of this. He's wondering where to go. He's going to the inside for Ferradura, the long sweeping right-hander. Jack Sedgwick makes the move on Alex Cohen, so that's one place gained, and he's going to look down the inside. The door closes there.
I just don't have a good feeling about this right now, Paul. Look now how close these drivers are. They nearly wiped each other out heading down that start-finish straightaway a couple of moments ago. That was real close, and here we go. Look at that, the dive from Sedgwick on Tompkins, heading down into turn number 10. He makes it sick, but that was banging doors. You can see Tompkins flashing the headlights. He's now going to get moved, nearly put on him by Alex Cohen in that Acura on the inside line, heading their way through the final real corner around this track of Zhongzhou. This is real tense stuff with these drivers. I just don't have a good feeling about it, though. They are racing oh so aggressive. We're just a tick over 20 minutes into this 1 hour long race, and these drivers are battling and banging doors as if it's a final lap of the final race of the season.
Well, Cohen gets ahead of Tompkins, and I just wonder if Tompkins has maybe used up his tyres with that aggressive defensive move on Cohen at the start of the last lap. Jack Sedgwick, it's almost as if he said, well, I'm moving ahead now because I can see that those drivers in first, second and third are pulling away. So I'm going to go for it and make those moves and try and stay with the front three. That's what it looked like to me from Jack Sedgwick, with the way that he suddenly became very desperate to make that move. As Nikolai Agard, remember, your top pro-am in this race, he's battling away with David Baker around the outside. That gives him the inside for the next corner. And the Norwegian, not able to get the job done.
this is huge for the points for Nikolai Agard, considering that these drivers are scored based off of their overall finishing position. This is huge for the driver of the number 3 car. If he can hold on to this P3 spot or even improve to get moved on Baker and possibly even challenge Adam State for the overall race win, this would be a huge result for your current Pro-Am leader. You have to go back a long ways to find the next Pro-Am car, but this is looking very good for Nikolai Agard. He doesn't want to get caught up in the drama too much, but he's been in positions like this before this season, so he knows what it's like being under pressure, being in a pressure cooker situation, and he also knows how to make full advantage of these good positions that he finds himself in as he nearly goes for the move on Baker into turn number 1.
And you can see how Adam State is trying to run away at the front of the field now because Baker and Agard are going to be fighting out. Now, David Baker, I know from experience, he's a former teammate of mine. He's a hard but fair racer. He will give you the space in the end. And, well, Nikolai Agard was not giving that one up without a fight. But Baker on the cutback, on the inside, is now going to squeeze him on corner exit. Cedric gets turned around. Agard off as well. The 3 of them together, and that is almost an identical copy of what happened between Daniel Ola and Bobby Thompson in the previous race.
That right there was a round of bowling in that small low flat out blast between turns number 6 and 7. That was unfortunate. That was so, oh man, those drivers were battling so hard. It was going to happen at some point though.
Baker, Cedric and Agard all with mechanical meatball flags, so they've got to head onto pit road. Their hand has been forced now by that incident, and well, I mean, we can't catch the end of it. Right, here we go then. How do you see this one, Ron?
And looking at this replay from the helicopter, there you can see, looking at that. I mean, from my personal perspective, it just looked like some really close quarters racing, trying to defend and fighting for the same piece of real estate out there on the racetrack. Let's look at this. Yeah, that Mustang, in my view, really should have backed out of it. Nikolai Agard, I mean, he found himself in such a good spot as the Pro-Am leader. Even if he lost out on those 2 positions, would have found himself still solidly inside the top 10 and inside of the top 5. Now, though, because he didn't back out of it, was a bit too aggressive as far as I'm concerned. He's got to find himself well down the running order. He's no longer in the Pro-Am lead. Instead, it's Richard Simnor in the lead of that category. The number 42 cars to stand at the moment. He should have backed out of it. I mean, it's red mist. These drivers are thinking at 1,000,000 miles an hour with basically no time at all to think about what could go wrong. But if it were me, I would have backed out of it.
I can point out one of my chat in my stream, Wembley, has pointed out, reminds me of Jarno Trulli and Adrian Sutil. Oh, contact! That's Tompkins around. Tompkins turned. Now, did Lombardi? Was that a push, or was it more of just an honest incident? We'll have to look at that one again, but Tompkins, from being in the top 3, has dropped way down the order now. Here we go.
Yeah, let's take a look at this. Heading down into turn number 10. Look at that, Lombardi going for the dive. I'm not sure if there was a huge amount of contact. There's definitely a nudge, at least from that first angle. Might want to take a look at another replay of that to see how bad the contact was. It was a last-second dive for sure, Lombardi. I'm not even sure if he hit him there. Maybe a little bit of netcode potentially. He may have just lost it on his own, did Tompkins.
I think he's just carried too much speed into the corner. And I don't think
That's
there is
spooked by Lombardi.
Yeah, he's just carried the speed. Yeah, I don't think there's contact. I think he's just carried too much speed into that corner, and around he goes. And I mean, he's done the right thing there. There was cars coming around. He was predictable. He held his brakes and then got going once there was a gap. So we've had more pitters on to pit road to get their pit stops done. Daniel Ola and Joe Newman headed onto pit road this last lap to get their service done, as we're not even at the halfway point of the race. We are getting later into the afternoon in sim time. That's crucial because the track temp now is only 42 degrees.
Yeah, as those shadows get longer, this track is beginning to cool. It's a good thing for these drivers. The tires are even happier about that news. But I want to raise a quick little point here, Paul. Not really relating to the weather, but relating to the boiling over of tensions that have led to multiple collisions. Look at Aiden Carter, your current AM leader, running P9 overall. That is a brilliant result as it stands for the driver of the number 43 car, currently leading this train of race cars in that Corvette. But this is a brilliant spot to find yourself in. You have to go back to Dan McCauley, who's running in 12th, I believe, to find the next AM racer. So not a huge cushion for the driver of the number 43 car, but leading it at the moment in the AM category, quickly approaching that halfway mark, shows you how quickly in these races things can get completely turned on their head.
And if you think as well, Dan McCauley was the winner of AM in that first race of the evening. Aiden Carter's had to work his way past and to get up ahead of Dan and work his way forward in that field. So that's good effort. Okay, they do owe us a pit stop to the first 21 cars on the track right now. So that is going to fix itself once all the pit stops have been done. But still, you can't take that away from Aiden. He's had to work his way forward in all of this race and get ahead of his AM championship rival of Dan McCauley. So Adam State still leads. He's got a 1.7 second lead over Alex Cohen, who's not under the pressure that he was with Adam Tompkins a few laps ago. Dino Lombardi, third place now. That's a gain of 14 places, with Alex Davidson and James Boumé right behind them. So you've got Alex Davidson fourth, James Boumé fifth, you've got Ross McFarlane sixth. In those three places, there are 6 pro championships between them there, with Ross McFarlane taking 4 of those.
Yeah, a whole lot of talent in this race and a whole lot of talented drivers at the front of the field. Your Pro-Am leader of Richard Simnor making that call to come into the pits in the number 42 car, so that's going to drop him outside of the top 10. We got a lot of talented racers all throughout this field. Going to give us a good battle to talk about. It's a clash of titans at the front of this field. State and Cohen, they've been running good races. State, of course, holding on to the lead from where he started in this second race after that reverse grid, top 17 being flipped. Dino Lombardi off the back of the win earlier on today in the first race, looking to have a very successful final 30 minutes of this race meeting, as he had the first 30 minutes of this race meeting here at Interlagos. But then you've got that talented pack of Davidson, Boumé, and McFarlane. Lots of really quick drivers at the front of the field. Also Anders Meyer in the number 20 Racing Lab Mustang in 7th. Can't discredit him either. He's probably looking to redeem himself after a somewhat unfortunate result in the first race of the day. Lots of really quick drivers looking to prove themselves at the front of the field.
I want to point out those that pitted early. Lorenzo Castellani, Alessio Benino, Michael Evdoka. They are the leaders of those that have pitted so far. Is it a case that them taking that pit stop early have been able to get quicker lap times in than those around them and push forward? In fact, Castellani last lap was a 34.2, your race leader a 34.6. Castellani's got race leading pace right now.
Yeah, that he certainly does. Probably not being helped by the fact he has a lot of traffic between him and your race leader of State. But to be able to put in times like that, dealing with the traffic and being at this point of the race is rather impressive. If you can keep, if these drivers who have come into the pits thus far can keep that same consistent level of pace, they may find themselves smelling like a bed of roses at the end of this race. More drivers making that call to come down pit lane as it stands at the present moment. But I gotta say, I am feeling even better about that call from some of those drivers who came into the pits earlier on than I did right as they did it. As we're in the second half, they're looking good.
You've got to take the flip side, though, is that later on in the race, their tyres are not going to be as good a state as those that are pitting later in the race. It's just whether you gain more through that change early on than you do later on. As we've been pointed out, that track condition is getting cooler and cooler as the race goes on, and that's going to make And that's actually going to make that play even bigger, because if they were taking those fresher tyres when it was at its hottest out there on track, and then others are taking those tyres as it's cooled down out there on track, they're not getting the same level of advantage as those drivers who came in about 20 minutes gone in the race did with their fresh rubber.
And when it comes to the strategy in a race like this, it is a game of chess being played at 165 miles an hour. This is the great thing about sports car racing with pit stops in the picture. You have to worry about that all the time. More drivers making that call to come into pit lane. And I gotta wonder how exactly it's all going to work at the yin and the yang, the pros and the cons of those drivers who came into the pits earlier on. There's a lot of stuff to consider, a lot of permutations that are being run in not just these drivers' minds, but probably all the people involved in their teams as well. That's what's really good about some of these drivers, the fact they've got a big team behind them, crunching the numbers, running the stats, and trying to figure out how exactly they can get into the lead of this race.
Dan McCauley has jumped Aidan Carter in the pit stops. They're both pitted at the same time. And if you remember, Aidan Carter was leading out and Dan McCauley was seconding out. They've switched places. Aidan Carter, though, was 9 seconds longer in the pit. I think that Aidan Carter has taken 4 tyres compared to Dan McCauley's 2.
And if he has done that, I gotta wonder what sort of pace advantage he's going to be having in that car. I mean, it may not seem like a whole lot of time lost, but losing 9 seconds down the pits can make a huge difference in a race like this. But with still a decent chunk of this race left to go, we're past the halfway mark at this point. But as it stands currently, 26.5 minutes left to go. I don't know about you, Paul. I have a feeling that he has the time and he has the opportunity to be able to make up those 9 seconds out there on the race course.
Looking to the inside for the race lead. That's Alex Cohen. Adam State runs wide on the exit of Interlagos and then heading up the hill towards Ferradura. And look, Dino Lombardi is there on the scene. He wants to get a double race win here today, but Adam State is putting on a defensive display. And if he carries this, oh my goodness, Alex Cohen all over the curb there into the left-hander. That was a bit of a late move from Alex. Dino Lombardi, though, he's got the box seat right now. He can pick and choose where he goes in all of this with those two fighting ahead. But look behind, because Davidson is dragging Boumet and McFarlane and Meyer along with them.
Yeah, that was some real close quarter stuff a couple of moments ago, but it's still going to be intense. You got a 3-3 battle on screen right now. 3 cars at the front, 3 cars at the back. If these 3 that we've got on screen right now continue to battle hard, though, those 3 right behind going to really get sucked up into this fight. Here we go, heading down into turn number 1. There's some close quarter stuff, and that's going to be Cohen grabbing the lead of this race from Adam State. But you got those 3 cars right behind. They may try and close up that gap. I think they have the chance to as well.
State left a car's width down the inside into the center S. Well, you don't need to ask anybody twice to be able to make that move, but that's exactly what Alex Cohen did in that 07 racing car. And now Dino Lombardi is wanting to get by Adam as quickly as possible in all of this in the grid and go car. Looking to the outside, Ferradura trying to then get the cutback on the corner exit here to get the inside into the next right-hander, and that's exactly what he's done. Down the inside for Lombardi. Can he hang it out around the outside? Because if he does, that gives him the inside for the right-hander at Pico de Pato, and that's exactly what he's done. Brilliant driving there from Dino Lombardi. That's why he's a World Championship driver.
That proved it right there. That was some slick stuff from the driver of the number 78 car, getting the move done to slip his way up into P2. Let's see if the drivers of Adam State, Alexander Davidson, James Boumet, and Ross McFarlane have anything to say about it. It is now a hornet's nest of race cars at the front of the field. Alex Cohen trying to pull away a little bit from Lombardi. Lombardi has got a lot of pressure to withstand, but I think the fight heading down into turn number 1 is actually going to be a fight of drivers coming down pit lane. Adam State in the number 18 car, making that call to pit.
James Boumé as well onto pit road, deciding that now is the time to make their pit stop. We're getting closer to that edge of when the pit stops will matter. Pit stop tyres and fuel for them both. Coming past the pit lane, Bobby Thompson, Aidan Young together out there on track. They both owe us a pit stop here in this race. Bobby Thompson will be looking to have quite the recovery drive in all of this here today, to go down the Retroposta, down into the Descida do Lago, and well, still together, Thompson and Aidan Young. Those two coming out of pit road. Boumé ahead of Adam State, so Boumé was 2 seconds quicker in the box. He's got the jump over Adam State. He's the leading car out of those that have pitted.
And that's going to be a big difference. It may not seem like a lot, but 2 seconds down pit lane, if you lose that down in the pits, that'll mentally bury you. We haven't really talked about this too much in this broadcast, Paul, but talking about the being in the right frame of mind to do well in a race like this, it even comes down to those runs through pit lane. If you end up losing a little bit of time, you may start to beat yourself up a little bit mentally. Believe me, I've been there. I've done that. I've seen that happen before to many an iRacer in my time covering some of these races. Paul, I'm sure you can relate to that experience as well. Having a slow run through the pits can really bury a driver mentally, as more drivers making that call coming into the pit lane, mainly Alexander Davidson, the number 1 car.
Yeah, so our reigning champion onto pit road, decided that now's the time to get that pit stop done, as still these two of Thompson and Young continuing that fight out on track. Cohen, Lombardi, there's barely a couple of tenths separating the two of them in first and second place as they go up towards Ferradura. Here they are, and through the right-hander they go onto the brakes. Will Lombardi make a move? No, not quite. Ross McFarlane not that far back of these two either, so watch out for Ross. He was Ron's pick before the start of this second race, and you could well be in the winning box seat here.
I gotta say, my pick of McFarlane, as much as I wouldn't say that it's aged like a fine wine, it hasn't aged bad either. I could say it's probably aged like, I don't know, polystyrene packing peanuts. It hasn't really changed ever since the start of this race. He's always been in that discussion. McFarlane, a very successful driver in the history of this series, and that 127 car is going to be looming in the background. You could just see that Acura going down that start-finish straightaway. Right in front of him, though, we may have a battle for the lead between Cohen and Lombardi heading down into turn number 1. They're not going to be side by side yet. Key word being yet. Alexander Davidson currently the top running of the cars to make that call to come down pit lane. These drivers running in the top 6 still have to do that, but I think they're going to give us a battle to talk about before that.
Yeah, Davidson and Boumé have actually switched places a couple of times. Davidson, of course, just out of pit road on that last lap, whereas Boumé was a lap prior to him, so able to get some more temperature into his cold rubber. Here's Lombardi and Cohen then for the lead of this race. Still owes a pit stop. Those two Acuras doing well. Now they are catching up to a little bit of traffic, not too much. But that's the number 23 of Simon Andre Livingston. If you're starting to get closer and closer to traffic, you're sort of thinking, let's get into the pits and get out of that traffic potentially.
Yeah, when it comes to a racetrack like this, where it's a bit harder to overtake compared to some of the other racetracks that we'll be visiting throughout this season, you got to think of that traffic dilemma a lot more. I think we've mentioned that a lot throughout the broadcast that we've done together thus far this season, Paul, but it really rings true in races like this. Having to get those moves done on the lap traffic, dispatching those cars as quickly and efficiently as you possibly can really makes a big difference in these races, and it also makes a big difference in terms of when and where you decide to pit. It's a huge factor, but in the final 19 minutes of this race, we're getting a crunch time, and we still have to think about when these drivers are going to make that call to come into the pits.
Ross McFarlane was just under 0.4 of a second quicker that last lap than the two race leaders as they come down the Reta Aposta once again into the Interlagos, and will be making the move through the double apex, left-hander then back uphill. Undulation is one word for it. You're basically on the side of a hillside here at this venue, so you're up and down dale like nobody's business, and it gives it just this brilliant character to this venue. One of the greatest tracks in the world of motorsport is Interlagos, and it's 3 for the lead at the front because McFarlane is there with them.
And let's see how this is going to shake out with the lap traffic right in front of these drivers as well. I think they're going to be catching them heading through that start-finish area flat-out blast to bring this lap to a conclusion. And let's see whether or not any of these drivers are going to decide to break away from this battle and make that call to pit. Will it be your race leader of Alex Cohen? Will it be your P2 runner and race winner in race number 1 here this evening of Dino Lombardi? Or will my pick, Ross McFarlane, decide that now is the time to come down pit lane? Who's going to make that call? It's going to be McFarlane.
Right, so it's McFarlane thinking, I know I've got the pace over these two. Get my pit stop done!
Whoa!
Lombardi for the race lead! Through he goes on Alex Cohen. Beautiful late braking move down into the center S, and that's Dino Lombardi to the lead. But Alex Cohen, he will not give this one up without a fight. That back marker out of the way on the left-hand side leaves the two leaders fighting it out. But Dino Lombardi for Grid & Go Esports is in the lead.
And I gotta wonder as to whether or not that lap traffic encounter heading down that start-finish straightaway off into turn number 1 gave Lombardi the shot that he very clearly took heading down into the corner. It was a textbook move, but he made it work. Lombardi has been on the charge thus far in this race. Started from the reverse grid last after winning race number 1, so he started down in 17th. He's been on the hard charge ever since in that number 78 car. It's been a brilliant drive for him up to this point, but with that move taken out of the picture, I gotta wonder, will we see Lombardi and Alex Cohen shadow the call that we saw from Ross McFarlane not terribly long ago and make that call to come into the pits? That is the real question, and I gotta raise one more point as well. How's Alexander Davidson in that number 1 car gonna shake out in all of that? He's running right behind McFarlane currently, but my current attention is on Lombardi and Cohen. How is it gonna work out with those drivers?
Well, Davidson has been running roadblock over James Boumé there, and Ross McFarlane has been able to get the jump over all of them in those pit stops. So it was McFarlane, Davidson, Boumé that were all together, remember, and McFarlane has made that jump with those pit stops happening. Davidson's been doing a great defensive job and has helped his teammate out, Aidan Young, onto pit road for his pit stop of the race. Incredibly though, the front 4 still carrying on in this one without a pit stop. They're going to go at least 29 laps and side by side. Boumé, he's going to get that job done and finally gets ahead of Davidson, and here comes Arthur Fertel in all of that. Arthur wants to get involved in this battle, and Boumé's giving him the slipstream.
And there we go, those two McLarens trying to work together, heading down that back straightaway, but not enough for Arthur Thurtle to get alongside Davidson. They're still side by side, heading through Jungstau, coming out of that section, down the small low flat out blast between 6 and 7 right now on the outside, and contact being made. That was a big whack to the side of Thurtle's number 70 car from the one of Davidson. Look at that, now Adam State trying to get the move done on Thurtle to slip his way up into P8, gets that move done successfully, heading down into the 8th corner around this racetrack. That could have ended in tears. There was some close quarters racing. That's a pretty big whack to the side of the number 70 car of Arthur Thurtle. It's taken him out of that battle. He's now on the back foot, but as we see this battle develop, we're also seeing that checkered flag approach for these drivers. We're only 14 minutes away from it, and we got the drivers at the front of the field finally coming into pit lane.
Yeah, Alex Cohen, Dino Lombardi, and Anders Meyer onto pit road. They're taking fuel. Now, is Lombardi taking tyres? I know he is. I've just seen him drop down off the jacks. Still too is Cohen, and away they go. In also comes Bobby Thompson to the last of the pitters, Arthur Thurtle as well, onto pit road. Where are the others? They're coming around the corner right now. It's going to be absolutely neck and neck, but Ross McFarlane's got the lead. He's been able to get the jump over both Dino Lombardi and Alex Cohen. And there you go, McFarlane with those 3 laps difference out there in clean air has been able to jump Lombardi and Cohen.
He was patient. He played the patient game, pulled off that strategy call. It's like, hey, I'm confident in how I can work this. I can come out of the pits into a nice pocket where I can really flex my muscles and stretch my legs and show off the pace that I've got in this 127 car. He worked that out to absolute perfection. Ross McFarlane into the race lead. We have less than 13 minutes left to go. That's a rather big cushion that he has between himself and Dino Lombardi. Lombardi, of course, a fast driver, but there's only so much you can do at the end of this race. McFarlane, though, executing that strategy just about as flawlessly as he could.
And as you mentioned, less than 13 minutes remaining. Not an awful lot of time for the other two to catch up. 2 seconds in all of that. But never say never here in the World GT Championship. Just to get you up to date and up to speed then, after all the pit stops have been done, it is Ross McFarlane who leads from Dino Lombardi in second place and Alex Cohen in third place. Pro-Am, your top Pro-Am driver, it's Richard Simner, 15th place overall at the moment. Second place in Pro-Am is Adam Watson, who was the championship leader coming into this round of the championship. In Pro-Am, and then Joe Newman, third place in Pro-Am in this race. Your AM drivers, well, it's Dan McCauley, who just leads Aidan Carter in 21st, 22nd place. Then the next AM driver is Jack London in 32nd place, third in AM. That's how things stand as things are in the podiums of each class. We've still got battling going on here, and that is Richard Simner fighting it out with the Abruzzi driver there alongside him. So too the Free-Am driver, so Simner, Tompkins, Aidan Young, all together here. This is all fighting of 15th, 16th and 17th places.
And they were nearly 3 wide heading down the back straightaway a couple of moments ago, too, Paul. Shows you that in these races, despite the fact that we've had 49 minutes of racing action leading up to this point, these packs are still incredibly close. Really speaks volumes about the competitiveness of this series. In fact, we've had so much racing action up to this point, and yet we still find ourselves in the final 10 minutes of this race, rapidly approaching that checkered flag, thinking of what sort of battles that we've got going on all throughout this field. The battle up towards the front, still intense. The battle we've got on screen right now, certainly intense as well. Shows you that in this series, the close quarters racing would not be possible if it weren't for the competitive drivers.
I think lap traffic has affected Ross McFarlane on that last lap. 0.8 of a second. Dino Lombardi has been able to close up to Ross McFarlane. Here's a move then from the Aidan Young down the inside, and gets the move done on Richard Simner up into that 15th place for Aidan Young. Dino Lombardi is definitely closer to Ross McFarlane because in the space of 2 laps, he's now just 1.2 seconds separating the 2 race leaders.
And just go raise this point talking about the last couple of lap times for Ross McFarlane. They have been a little bit iffy in terms of the lap times that he's been setting. So I think things not really working out too well for McFarlane in terms of these lap traffic encounters at this stage of the race, considering how much racing we've had up to this point. The field spread out. You got one small little slice of butter and you're trying to spread it all over that piece of bread. And as it stands currently, we're seeing a position in which these drivers have to battle with not only their competitors for position, they also have to battle with the minds of the lapped cars that they're having to overtake around some parts of the racetrack where you wouldn't even think of going for an overtake, because that's contact, a big amount of drama coming out of turn 10.
Yeah, that was the 147 of Cameron de Bastos, who's not had the best race. There's less than half a second covering your race leaders with 9 minutes remaining. There they are. You don't need the timing, don't need to watch to see how close they are. You can physically see it on screen. It's Lombardi versus McFarlane for the overall race lead. It's 2 Acuras against each other, and not that far behind, Alex Cohen wondering whether he can get involved in all of this. But this has, as good old JR used to say, business has picked up.
That it certainly has. That register is cha-chinging all the time with how much the business has picked up. This is some real good stuff coming right to the end of this race. It's looking like a 2-horse race as it stands currently, with McFarlane and Dino Lombardi breaking away from Alex Cohen right behind. Cohen's got a battle of his own with himself and James Boumet. But right now, I gotta wonder how these 2 drivers are going to try and tackle each other. How exactly is Ross McFarlane going to hold on to that spot? What sort of defensive maneuvers is he going to pull? Dino Lombardi, on the other hand, we've seen him go for some gutsy moves. My mind harkens back to early on in the race when he was going side by side into turn number 10 and spooked a driver into a spin. Let's see if Dino Lombardi will be able to intimidate the driver of the 127 car to force his will and get that move done. Both of these drivers have cut their way through the field like a hot knife through butter. They've had a good race. Let's see who's going to be the one grabbing the checkered flag.
You're not intimidating Ross McFarlane. He's been there, done it, won the t-shirt in this series. He knows how to win a championship, and he knows how to race hard against some of these top drivers. I think back to some of the battles he's had with Jack Sedgwick, with Josh Thompson, who used to race in this series, James Boumet, of course, that epic championship fight that those 2 had out there on track. McFarlane knows what it takes, and he will not be intimidated. So Lombardi, he's got to try and outsmart Ross McFarlane, which is a lot easier said than done.
Yeah, a lot of things in life are a lot easier said than done, and when it comes to this battle, trying to get some moves done and trying to grab the win in this race is certainly one of them. This is going to be intense at the end of this race. We've got basically no time left to go. We're about 40 seconds away from having only 1/10 of this race left to go. It's been a wild ride up to this point. These drivers know what their strengths and weaknesses are. They know what their cars' strengths and weaknesses are. There's no difference in the cars. They're both running Acuras, but let's see how it's going to shake out. The setups can be different. The driving styles of these 2 can be completely different as well. McFarlane's been around the block before. Dino Lombardi's been around the block before. These 2 are some of this series' finest, and I think they're going to give us a fine battle to talk about at the end of this race. Lombardi closing.
Here we go. Lombardi looking to the inside. Well, Ross McFarlane's not really fighting that one into turn 1. Dino Lombardi to the head of the field. He takes the lead. And Dino Lombardi's trying to make this back-to-back victories here. Now, is Ross McFarlane maybe having to work to a fuel number? Has he not quite got enough fuel on board, perhaps?
I wouldn't rule that out at all. You gotta wonder, the amount of stuff going through these drivers' minds, sometimes a little bit of a slip in math can decide your fate in these races. I wonder if Ross McFarlane has had one of those moments like that befall him. Running on board with him, I'm not sure if he's really going to attack this too much. Lombardi, of course, a very fast driver in this series. McFarlane been around the block before, a multi-time champion, obviously a multi-time race winner. I wonder what McFarlane has up his sleeve entering the final 5 minutes of this race. He obviously has a very fast car. He was able to get the moves done to take this race lead through strategy. He's a very smart driver. He's a very calculated driver, and I wonder if he's running the permutations in his head to try and figure out when and where he should pounce.
Is it a case of maybe he didn't fight that one too hard because he wanted to be in the slipstream so that when it comes towards the end of the race, he can then try and get a slipstream move done onto the last couple of laps, perhaps? The challenge with that, though, is actually getting back past that other driver. For me, track position is king, in my opinion. I want to be that car in the lead. I don't want to just gift a position to somebody else, and I don't think that Ross would have necessarily gifted the position, but something must be up here.
Yeah, there's got to be something that Ross McFarlane has up his sleeve, because heading down into turn number 1, when he raced it a couple of moments ago, Paul, he didn't really fight it. He was just like, alrighty, we want to take the lead? Fine, go ahead and grab it. You're not going to be leading at the end of this race. It was probably what McFarlane was thinking in his head, but what exactly is he planning is the real question. I gotta say one thing as well. In terms of talking about that, Lombardi, it's thinking inside of Ross McFarlane's head and trying to do that as best as I can. I gotta think McFarlane probably allowed Lombardi to go in front to avoid bringing the likes of Alex Cohen and James Boumet into this fight, because if those two were giving us a side-by-side fight to talk about every single corner of every single lap in the final 5 of this race, it probably wouldn't be a 2-car battle for the lead. It'd probably be a 5-car battle for the lead as it stands currently. So I think Ross McFarlane was maybe looking to prevent that when he decided to allow Dino Lombardi to slip into the race lead, not really challenge him too much. We got some traffic a little bit farther up the roads, though, so we'll wait and see how this battle is going to change now with 2 laps to go.
Steve Koenig just getting out the way of the race leaders, doing a good job of keeping it out of their way. Remember, in this series, blue flags, they do have an effect. You are expected to help assist the leaders be able to work their way past. So if you get a blue flag, you do have to allow space and not make it too difficult for those cars to go past. But McFarlane and Lombardi absolutely together out there on track as we carry on. I can tell you in AM there has been a change in the race lead for AM, and Aidan Carter has finally made it past Dan McCauley. So 21st, 22nd, switch of positions for those two, and Adam Watson has taken the lead in Pro-Am ahead of Richard Simner and Joe Newman. But those 3 are all together out there. The top 3, well, the top 4 in Pro-Am separated by a second right now. So we don't know where to look in all this, because we've got an overall race lead that's really close, you've got a Pro-Am lead that's incredibly close, and you've got an AM lead that's just changed positions and is relatively close as well. Great stuff all the way through the field in this championship.
Yeah, brilliant stuff. This technical round at Interlagos has certainly not disappointed. This has been some brilliant stuff up to this point. Gotta say one thing as well, referring to that Pro-Am battle, it's been up and down, it's been topsy-turvy all throughout this race. I wonder how things are going to go, but the white flag in the air, only 1 more lap of racing action. Let's see how things shake out.
So, your race leaders into the center S. If Ross McFarlane's going to make a move, he needs to start thinking about making it sooner rather than later. There you see the bottom screen is the Pro-Am race lead. Adam Watson ahead of Richard Simner, Joe Newman and Nikolai Agard all together in the Pro-Am lead. Ross McFarlane's close to Lombardi into Interlagos for the final time in this race. They go up. Oh, that's a late move, too deep in the Pro-Am, and that's going to allow Watson to stay ahead, and contact, Newman's around, and bang, contact with one of our other cars, and disaster on this last lap.
Big drama heading through the center S. That Mustang is all sorts of torn up. That is going to be a tow back to pit lane, a heartbreaking way to end that race in that Pro-Am battle. That's still going to be intense, but at the front of the field, Dino Lombardi still in the race lead. McFarlane hasn't challenged him yet. As we take a look at the replay to see that drama, I got to wonder if McFarlane is trying to save up a run to the line.
Oh, that was a little bit dim, but your race lead, they're absolutely neck and neck together. The clock strikes 0. We are on the final lap, and it's Dino Lombardi who's going to go back to back here at Interlagos. 2 from 2. Great job from Dino Lombardi at Grid & Go Esports for round number 8 of the World GT Championship, ahead of Ross McFarlane and Alex Cohen. Your top Pro-Am then, we saw them battling, is Adam Watson as they're coming across the line. Jack Cedric is battling a little bit further down in the field as they head to the line as well. Bobby Thompson, 34 places gained for the Altitude Esports driver. Sensational stuff from Bobby. Adam Watson takes the win for Altitude Esports by Sim Stickers, and Aiden Carter, your winner in AM here in this one, able to stay ahead of Dan Macaulay. That was a tremendous race there, Ron.
That was absolutely brilliant, and in a 60-minute long race, you usually think, yeah, things are probably going to cool off. They really did not. The only thing that was cooling off was the track temperatures. Outside of that, it was some brilliant battling right to the line. I think we've got another one forming here with Paddy Falconer running on board with him in the Acura. Will he try and get a move done? He will not be close enough to get the move done on Adam Hedgecock right to the line. Those two going to finish in P32 and P33 respectively. But that race simply did not have a lull in the action all the way up to the line. Lombardi and McFarlane were close. It was practically nothing between those two considering the hour of racing that preceded it. I gotta wonder though how differently things would have shaken out if McFarlane didn't allow Dino Lombardi to just blow his doors off hang down into turn number 1. I wonder if McFarlane decided to go for that thinking, hey, I probably don't have the pace to contend with Lombardi. Lombardi, either way, he was just a man on a mission ever since the drop of the green flag in that first race, and he's going to go 2 for 2.
So here we are then. Here's the results of round number 8 of the World GT Championship here on RaceSpotTV. Dino Lombardi just 2.5 tenths of Ross McFarlane, the Grid & Go esports driver, winning that one over the WSR esports butt kicker driver. Alex Cohen in 07 Racing finishes the podium in 3rd place with James Boumet, Anders Meyer, Alex Davidson, Adam State, your pole sitter, in 7th ahead of Lorenzo Castellani, Daniel Ola and Alessio Bonino. Daniel Ola, by the way, good recovery drive, up 12 places for him. Michael Evdoka, 11th ahead of Jack Sedgwick. Altitude Esports by 3M driver Bobby Thompson, biggest mover in the field, 34 places gained ahead of Aidan Young. David Baker, who dropped down the order after that contact earlier on, with Adam Tompkins there in 16th. Adam Watson is your top Pro-Am driver in 17th. He finishes just 1 place ahead of the next Pro-Am driver of Richard Simner. Nikolai Agard rounds out the podium in Pro-Am in 19th place with Arthur Thurtle rounding out in 20th place. 21st then for Michael Gray for Full Tilt Motorsport, and then it's Aiden Carter for Unid Racing taking the victory then of Dan Macaulay by 4 tenths of a second between the two of them in AM, 1st and 2nd respectively, 22nd and 23rd. Phil Samways ahead of Jonathan Walker with Paul Webster, Chris Chatterton, Jack Osborne, David Vey and Dan Blackwell rounding out the 30th place. Jack London for E-Datum then finishes off the AM podium in 31st. And then Adam Hedgecock, Paddy Faulkner, Luca Monroe, Will Guthrie, Ben Altria and Joe Newman down there further down in the order. No, he isn't. Joe Newman had to take a tour back to pit road, so I think he's going to be 38th actually, because Simon Andre Livingston would have been ahead of him. Drew Fletcher and Alistair Pollock 1 lap down. And then into 41st, Yaman Pruis 1 lap down. Steve Koenig, we're still getting lapped in towards the end of the race with Ben Gregory. Cameron De Bestos then in 44th, 4 laps down. Drivers who did not finish: Andy Shield, Taylor Lane, Alessandra Toccio, Leo Tregurtha and Jesse Payne Wilkins. Right, well, there's a lot to unpackage out of all of that and not a lot of time to do that, Ron. Incredible drive from Dino Lombardi, wasn't it, to work his way through from 17th to the overall win.
Yeah, that was an expertly crafted drive from Dino Lombardi. Just a brilliant day in the sim. Gang the double done here at Interlagos. Seeming to enjoy his trip here in Brazil is Dino Lombardi. That number 78 car was an indomitable force all throughout this race. A really good result for him, carrying a lot of momentum into the next race of the season.
Yeah, really, really good stuff from Dino Lombardi. But Ross McFarlane, great to see him up there fighting for the win on that one, that is for sure. Pro-Am, Adam Watson, it didn't look like the favoured car did, that Porsche, but he's been able to drag himself a Pro-Am win here, has Adam.
Yeah, it worked out really well for him, picking his way through the chaos of a Pro-Am battle that was so topsy-turvy. I really thought that Nikolai Agard had it earlier on, but thanks to an incident hanging down into turn number 7, the entire complexion of that Pro-Am battle got turned on its head. At the end of the day, Watson's going to win it.
And then just finally as well, Aiden Carter looked like he took 4 tyres at the pit stop. Worked out for him, taking the AM win.
And that AM class always so exciting and an expertly crafted strategy to get it done. Well done for a lot of the drivers up and down the field. Some good drives to talk about leaving this race here at Interlagos.
Well, next time, just in a week's time on March the 3rd, we are going to be having one of our 2 endurance rounds. It's a 1 hour, 45-minute race, and it's at one of the greatest endurance racing tracks in the world. Sebring International Raceway. You gotta respect the bumps, and the drivers will be taking that track on next week, so make sure you join us for that one. But it's been a tremendous day of action here, but the king of Interlagos is Dino Lombardi. 2 wins from 2 races. Until next week, thanks a lot. We'll see you soon. Bye-bye.